రాజధాని చేసేటప్పుడు ఆ రాజధానిలో మనం సావాలి.
నేను ఎలా బ్రతకాలి, మా కుటుంబం ఎలా పోషించబడాలి?
కూలి చేసుకుంటే ఆ కూలి లేదు.
ఇప్పుడు చూస్తేనే రాజధాని పెడతానంటున్నారు, మేము ఎలా బతకాలని.
Words cannot capture the pathos of this old man. One can only shed bitter tears. He sees no future for his 17-member family. He is forced to sacrifice his only source of livelihood, fishing. He has to vacate his hut and forego his livelihood to make way for Amaravathi, the new capital of Andhra Pradesh. This is not the tale of Dokkada Eeswara alone. Thousands of landless poor, Dalits, farm workers and people living below the poverty line in the vicinity of the new capital are left with a similar fate. A pall of gloom descends on 72-year-old Eeswara as he realizes that his family is not included in the list of the landless people eligible for the government grant of 2,500 rupees per month. Not that the amount is any consolation for giving up the very hut he lives in, but at least it would pay for some milk for his young grandchildren. The government is pooling together 34,000 acres of prime agricultural land on the banks of River Krishna to build the world-class capital. It has promised that the key principles of the master plan will be a vibrant economy, livability, connectivity and mobility, sustainability, and finally a city that is a people's capital.
He is talking of inclusive development. Now when you construct a huge capital city with cement concrete structures which only benefit real estate agents and who only benefit absentee landlords, how is it a people's project?
To ensure the consent of landowners to give up their properties, the government has offered to pay them good compensation. Besides paying them 30,000 rupees per acre per annum for a period of 10 years, they are offered 1,000 square yards of residential land and 300 square yards of commercial property in the core capital region. A very lucrative offer. Some landowners are offered even more. Little wonder that with a few exceptions, most have come forward to join in the land pooling scheme. In stark contrast, the landless poor have been given a raw deal. Many of them are in a state of shock, not knowing where to turn for justice.
How many lakh people will lose their livelihood because of the capital city is not known, and there is no rehabilitation formula at all.
Andhra Pradesh Capital Region Development Authority APCRDA has announced a meagre pension of 2,500 rupees per month per family for a period of 10 years for the landless through a Capital Region Social Security Fund.
So 2,500 rupees per month is very negligible. It should be minimum I would say 10,000 rupees a month.
But there is no mention about the size of the family that will benefit from the scheme. Many families were excluded during enumeration.
More than 30,000-35,000 landless labor. Landless labor is more than the number of farmers. Taking advantage of the weakness of the local people, they totally ignored the agricultural labor. They were not even treated as human beings.
There are many questions apart from these that the government officials refuse to answer.
The landowners, in fact, getting 10 to 20 times, 30 times of their present asset value, whereas livelihood losers almost equal to them. What they are getting in return? They were promised 2,500 rupees per family pension and 365 days work employment under National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, which is a farce.
Apart from lapses in identifying the beneficiaries, the Capital Region Master Plan ignores the possibility of mushrooming of new slums, because there are no housing schemes visualized for the people who will not only build the city but also sustain it.
Will it provide space, life livelihood, places to live for the working classes who will build this city and sustain this city. The carpenters, the masons, the vendors, the domestic workers, the cleaners, the working class of this city needs to have a place within the city so that they can live and earn their livelihood there.
According to the 2011 census, India's urban slum population is 17.2%. Every city needs its working class to sustain itself. But our city planners and administrators consider them encroachers. How can the new capital be considered an inclusive people's capital when its working classes are not provided for?
Right to shelter is a fundamental right guaranteed to the people of India under Article 21 of our Constitution that talks about right to life. The United Nations report on adequate housing precisely directs the governments that right to housing is a fundamental right that is the responsibility of every government to provide to every citizen.
But successive governments in India have deliberately ignored this right. The state of Andhra Pradesh is no different when it comes to allotment of land and resources in its new capital. The people of the new capital region have enormous grouses on this issue.
People who have really benefited are absentee landlords who are sitting in Vijayawada, Guntur and Hyderabad. And they have pocketed the money in this entire game of real estate business. And the people who are really ploughing the land, who are going to lose the land, they have got very little.
We have made an effort to find out the ground reality in the villages that are being acquired for the capital region. Here are some typical cases of displacement and loss that are masked by the extravagant hype. Meet Dokkada Eeswara, a fisherman who migrated 3 decades ago from Amalapuram in East Godavari district to eke out a living on the banks of the river. He is one of the 10 families that migrated to the village. He has no property except for this hut. Meet Saraswati, his wife. They have 3 sons, 4 daughters and 8 grandchildren. All of them live in this little hut. The 72-year-old man still ventures into the river, not that he makes a big catch. Once he was a strong man, a leader in the community. A paralytic stroke disabled him. That affected even his ability to speak.
ఇప్పుడు చూస్తేనేమో రాజధాని పెడతానంటున్నారండి. మేము ఎలా బతకాలండి? మా నాన్నకేమో పచ్చిపోత వచ్చింది. మా నాన్నకి 70 సంవత్సరాలు పచ్చిపోత వచ్చి ఏం ఆధారం లేదండి. ఆధారం లేకపోతే ఈ రాజధాని ఒకటి మళ్ళీ పొలాలు ఇన్ని స్థలాలు తీసేస్తానంటున్నారు. తీసేస్తే మాకు ఆధారం ఏమీ లేదండి.
Eeswara has 2 queries in his mind. The foremost is how he and his family will survive without the only occupation they know, fishing. Will the meager 2,500 rupees of pension he is promised help him and his family to live with dignity?
So the first major casualty of this land pooling is all the agricultural laborers and others who are dependent on agriculture directly or indirectly and living in the villages have been totally thrown out of work in one go.
Sravan is now a fruit vendor. He was forced to drop out of school when he was only 11 to support his family. His effort is to educate his younger brother Seshagiri, who is doing intermediate second year. Sravan earns around 300 rupees a day. Sravan was an agriculture worker before he took to fruit vending recently. Farm work came to a grinding halt after the government imposed restrictions on agricultural activity in the vicinity of the capital region. His mother Meramma and father Yesobu left for Tenali, 50 kilometers away from their village, to get some work in the paddy fields there.
పోషించడానికి పనులు లేక ఇక్కడ రాజధాని అయ్యేపాటికి ఇక్కడ అన్ని బిల్డింగ్లు అయిపోతున్నాయి. వ్యవసాయం భూములు ఏమీ లేవు. లేకపోవడం వల్ల వెళ్ళారు. అమ్మ నాన్న తెనాలి పని కోసం వెళ్ళారు.
How does the government talk of a people's capital and sustainable growth when people like Sravan and his family are excluded from it?
Imagine a young agricultural labour earning 8,000 to 9,000 rupees till last month, 2 months ago. So he is getting 2,500 rupees. So Andhra government has dealt with this matter in the most cruel and most anti-people manner.
Will young boys and girls like Seshagiri be able to complete their education?
మన్నయ్య కూడా పనికి వెళ్తాడు. నా ఇంట్లో గడవక చిన్నప్పుడు మన్నయ్యని పంపించేసి పనికి పంపించేశారు. ఇప్పుడు ఇక్కడ రాజధాని చేయడం వల్ల ఇక్కడ ఏం పనులు లేక మా అమ్మ మా నాన్న వాళ్ళు తెనాలి వెళ్ళి అక్కడ కూలి పని చేసి నన్ను చదివిస్తున్నారు.
The planners and administrators dream of a world-class capital city for Andhra Pradesh. But what happens to the dreams of families like that of Sravan? Dunna Nagamalleshwara Rao is a leaseholder of 2-acre agricultural land in the core capital region. He was able to feed his family and even educate his 2 sons with the income from the banana garden in the 2-acre land. His wife, Jyoti, worked as hard as himself to make the 1,20,000 rupees he made every year. He is in deep trouble now, as this is the last crop he can take. The government has decided that there shall be no agricultural activity in his village after this season.
A toll will be taken of a large population who will within a few years from now, except those who are already in the non-agricultural sector and are only absentee landlords, other landowners, farmers and the farm labourers both will feel the deprivation which will lead to their destitution.
The many dreams of a better future for his sons lie shattered. The education of his children is in peril. How can he help his sons to continue their studies with a meagre 2,500 rupees? The boys have already dropped out of college since the capital region was announced. They help him with grazing the cattle and farm work.
That land actually in fact continues to be cultivated by a large number of tenant holders and agricultural labourers. But what is happening in the process is a depeasantization of a large number of cultivators and agricultural labourers without giving them any alternative livelihood opportunities.
There are about 2,190 tenant farmers like Nagamalleshwara Rao. They know that tomorrow there will be no farm and no work. Is this what we call a people's capital?
The question is, how come that the government that talks about a people's city is not talking about the lives, the livelihoods and how the capital city would affect their life and livelihood of people such as these?
Inclusive growth is not depriving people of their homesteads and livelihoods.
They are being thrown out of their dwelling places and their jobs, their livelihoods are being snatched. Now this cannot be called by any stretch of imagination inclusive growth.
But it is ensuring the improvement of the living standards of all, especially the most vulnerable, the many Eeswara Raos, Sravans and Nagamalleshwara Raos. It is using the scarce resources of land, water and amenities for the welfare of all in an inclusive, just and sustainable manner. It is then and only then will the new capital deserve its name, Amaravathi, the eternal city inspired by the compassionate Buddha.